So before we get to our first guest, let's give a warm welcome back to former co-host who is returning back for this last episode for the current run of the pod, and that's with Colum Cronin from Dublin City University. Colum, it's been a very long time. Welcome back, my friend.
Thanks, Matt. Nice to be back, and you have steered the ship masterfully over the past little while through the COVID waters and through the transition back into, I suppose, more traditional learning experiences for people, but obviously all the people involved. It has been interesting to watch the journey from afar, and lovely to be back on the ship before maybe it docks, and who knows, as you said, what the future lies in store. But yeah, great to be back.
Yeah, and we could have had this last episode with having the band back together. So how's life so far?
Good. Things in Dublin are pretty good. And obviously, in the world of education, it's I suppose we're all facing similar challenges in many respects, and I'm sure we will get into those with our guest. In a personal level, it has been an exciting few years in terms of covering the NFL and what has come with that. That has been a lot of fun, and getting to go to games and cover them as a media member. And I will be in Arizona. So if we have any listeners who are down there in Phoenix, I will be there for the Super Bowl week. And, still love catching up with people. So definitely let me know if you will be in the Phoenix area. I'm there from the 6th of February to the 13th is when I fly out. I still don't pronounce H's in TH words, Matt.
Yes, and I'll still make fun of you for that. And you're probably making a lot of people jealous, those that may not be able to be in Arizona and for the Super Bowl. But let's go ahead and both of us here. Let's welcome to the podcast Dr. Jennifer E. Joslin. Dr. Joslin works at Drury University as Associate Vice President for Academic Affairs and Director of the Robert and Mary Cox Compass Center. She is a former NACADA president and current NACADA consultant. Dr. Joslin's most recent book is Advising LGBTQA College Students, co-edited with the brilliant Dr. Craig McGill. She is co-editor of the Academic Advising edition of New Directions in Higher Education and the New Advisor Guidebook and Academic Advising Administration, among other publications. Dr. Joslin helped envision and globally implement the NACADA e-tutorials module for professional development of advisors and administrators with George Steele and Alicia Schaefer. Dr. Joslin earned her AB at Occidental College and master's and PhD at the University of Iowa. She is a former chair of the NACADA LGBTQ Advising and Advocacy Advising Community. She is wife to Kathy Davis, mom to Melissa, Anthony, and Truman, and a proud member of the Jane Austen Society of North America. She lives on land belonging to Kickapoo, Osage, and Sioux peoples. And if you want to connect with Dr. Joslin, feel free to contact her at jjoslin785@gmail.com. Jennifer, welcome to the Adventures in Advising podcast.
Oh, thank you so much, man. Colin, what a treat to be here. I'm very excited and excited to talk about all things today.
And Truman just celebrated a birthday?
He's 3 puppy years old. He's very mature. He started talking back a little bit. You have to be really careful. And I'm not the only one who's dog crazy, I don't think, on this broadcast today. So I'm in good company.
You are indeed, and we are delighted to have the opportunity to talk to you, and it's great because it has come full circle. So when Matt got in touch and was saying to come back on for this kind of final iteration of this version of the podcast, at least, and that we'd be chatting to you, I was very excited because my NACADA journey began, Jennifer Joslin, with that conference in Dublin. And I don't know if you saw this, but and listeners won't know, but I am wearing a K-State t-shirt because we did a gift exchange, and I was given Jennifer Joslin, who I knew nothing about at that point, and we were giving each other, and Jennifer gave me a K-State t-shirt. That that is going back to the summer of 2018, and I still have it, and I felt fitting to wear it.
Yeah.
And I suppose that kind of leads me into, the first question, the origin story, right? Everyone has it. I mean, you can go to Greek mythology or you can go to Marvel superheroes. There is an origin story. And I am very interested, given the career that you have had and the achievements that Matt has listed there in your bio. Like, how talk to me, Jennifer, and talk to the listeners about like the journey and how it began for you, and where the interest, I suppose, in advising come from.
Well, that is such a great lead in, though I am feeling the pressure to match Greek mythology and the MCU. I don't know if my story is quite up to that. I will say that I thought I was heading to graduate school. When I went to graduate school, I thought I was heading towards a life of being a professor in the sociology of sport. So that was really the love. I went to undergrad in international relations, but in terms of being 22 in 1982 and coming out, 86, sorry, in coming out and thinking of what it would be to be an LGBT person in the foreign service or in international service, I thought, be honest, Jennifer, that's not going to happen right now. And so I did a little retooling and I headed to graduate school trying to combine my interest in women in sport with the study, kind of the critical study of sport. And so off I went to graduate school. And honestly, if I had had a little bit more confidence in my ability to write in that field, I might have never become a professional advisor. But I worried that I didn't go home and think of 12 different paper topics every night on the bus ride home. Instead, I went home and I wanted to garden and I wanted to have a life and to build a family. And I started to look around, and I had colleagues who had worked in the advising center at the University of Iowa, go Hawkeyes, and they still got to work with students. We actually got to work with the whole student, not just the student who was showing up in my women's studies classes or not just the student in my sociology of sport classes, but the whole student. How did they come to those classes? What were they doing? Where were they from? And I just fell in love with the conversation, or as we say at Drury, the slow work of great advising. And that conversation, I feel like I've been in a conversation with students since 1995, really, which is when I got my first job in advising. And I loved it. I started writing in the field. I had great bosses who encouraged my professional development. And so I just had the opportunity to get more engaged. And I found my writing confidence. I've always been overconfident when it came to teaching and speaking, so that wasn't an issue. But my writing confidence, my ability to produce works and edit and go through the process has really built over time. So yeah, my origin story is there's a door open somewhere, and I don't know, maybe I practiced like marching through the door and being a superhero. See what I did there? On once I got to the other side of the door, I don't know, but I really have loved this field, and I loved it almost probably from the very beginning.
Well, I'll say that is a pretty good origin story. And you have done a lot. I mean, if we fast forward to 2022, you were also the winner of the Virginia Gordon Award for excellence in the field of academic advising. And for those that don't know, the Virginia Gordon Award is a lifetime achievement award. It's celebrating significant contributions to the field of academic advising in various areas. So from like research and publications to leadership in the advising field to commitment and advocacy to advising. So for one, belated congratulations on that. What was it like being nominated for and ultimately winning that award?
Well, it was a great honor. It is a lifetime achievement, and so I really feel the honor of that, and the time to take just a second to think about my different journey, all the paths. One thing I think is kind of fun is that, and I talked about this a little bit when I said thank you at the conference, is that I'm one of those transition people. I knew people who founded NACADA and still know, like Tom Greitz, folks who are still active in the field. And I knew a lot. I didn't know all the early presidents, but I knew a lot of those presidents up to now. And also, right now, I have a chance to see the leaders of tomorrow. So there's a little bit of a really neat transition point where NACADA was just coming out of its reorganization in the 2000s. And now we're transitioning to a really great org where you can be a leader in 100 ways. Which was a visionary development as opposed to when I was coming up, which was you were supposed to do this and then you did the next level, then you did the next level. And the reality is now you can be a region podcaster, you can be an international podcaster, you can be a writer in 10 areas. You don't ever have to be president for you to have an impact in the field because there are so many different media. There's so many different outlets. There's so much respect for expertise regardless. I don't know. It's pretty cool how we have developed. We just have to get through what I think is a tricky period right now in terms of the pandemic and professional people joining the professional org and recommitting to professional development. But yeah, I'm optimistic. I really am.
Jennifer, I suppose I think you are synonymous with leadership, right? Certainly in my mind, and I think in many people's mind, you've held different leadership positions. I know it's an area of interest for you. Even when you spoke earlier, you talked about the brilliant bosses that you've had. So you recognize the importance of leadership. And I'm always fascinated, and I think Matt will know this because I probably bring it up in a lot of interviews, but when you get to speak to people who've held leadership positions and who've been successful, and you've heard other people talk about, because you talk about great bosses, I've heard people talk about you as a great boss. I'm just interested in hearing about like what you feel makes somebody a great leader. And I know that is a large and kind of abstract question in many respects, but just, from your perspective.
Oh, that is a great question. And the neat thing about that question is there are as many answers as there are types of leaders. So I have worked with people who had very traditional styles. And because that was the style I grew up with, I was able to respond and fit into that style. But I have learned something from every boss. If you're thinking critically in a good way, not critically in a bad way, but if you're really thinking about the life you're having or the experiences you're having, you can learn anything from any situation. Now, the challenge of implementing that, I've made mistakes on the way. I've learned from those mistakes. I've cast my net across campus to see if my current boss wasn't somebody whose style matched mine. Then I looked across campus to see if there was someone else. I made the call. I tried to get to know them better. There's an engagement to being the kind of supervisor you need and the kind of supervisor you wish you had, and always aspirationally the kind of boss that you can be if you would just put some pieces together. So it helps when you have terrific people, which means that hiring is probably the most important thing any supervisor does. And it's easy to get caught up in your regular to-do list and not really slow down and pay attention to hiring. And so that makes a big difference. The people you have, the respect you have for them, the always wanting them to do what they need to do. Sometimes it's fly away and get an even better job. Sometimes it's try something new. Sometimes they have to tell you to get out of the way, that somehow you're you're engaged, you're managing them too closely in a way you didn't realize you were doing. Like, I don't know. It's an on, if you're good, it's ongoing, it's humbling, it's always trying to do better, it's listening harder, it's making mistakes and learning from them, it's apologizing, it's managing up. Yeah, it's a big job, but it's also, I don't know. People are pretty terrific, and advisors are part of that workforce. I think they're usually pretty cool to talk to, and pretty cool to see them grow and see what they can do with students and for students, etc. I don't have a magic answer there.
Oh, that was a lovely answer. I think Colin would agree too with that. I mean, it's just like you're saying, you can learn from every situation, but then also like with your employees, it's knowing when to hold on and when to let
Oh yeah.
go. They have a better opportunity somewhere else. Now, speaking of where you're at Drury University, like for those that don't know much about your institution, like how would you describe your institution and also your specific roles and responsibilities there?
Yeah, Drury is a change of pace for me. I started at a small private liberal arts institution in California, and then with going to graduate school at a Big Ten university, and then going out to work at Oregon in a Pac-12 big university, and then being at Kansas State at Nakata, big university. I'm hearkening back a little bit to my my early years at a small private liberal arts. Drury is not just a liberal arts, but it also has professional schools in education, business, architecture. So it's actually an NACU, which is a National Comprehensive University. So we think of the University of Laverne out west, and other schools I can't think of at the moment that are part of this particular category. And we are, small and plucky. We're about to celebrate our 150th year, and it is a faculty-focused advising model, but we have robust student support. And one of the neat things about Drury, I got here, and they had just revamped their academic platform to do something they're calling Fusion, which is a focus on classroom experiences, but also career development. And so the academic program focuses on very practical experiences embedded in the classroom, but they also had major donors to contribute special faculty positions, special faculty advisors who would be connected to our center. So our center does advising, career planning and development, accessibility, disability services, tutoring, and academic workshops. And now we even have national fellowships and study abroad in our area. And so there's money to support faculty who want to do special programming, who want to work very closely with students. We've gotten to do a Council of Independent Colleges NetView grant, which really does a lot with small colleges. And they have helped us do a 2-year grant on calling and vocation. So to not just talk about vocation, but to talk about who are you and what are you called to do. And, even when I was doing work, like I represented Nakata to the Lumina Foundation, the Gates Foundation, Achieving the Dream, Complete College America. Even then, it isn't all about just completing the hours to get the degree. It's about what are students learning in the classroom. And now it's a pleasure to do that every day. Who are you? Where are you going? Why college? What's interesting to you? So faculty are having those conversations, which is energizing to listen to how faculty work with students. And it's also just fun to think of programs to help students get engaged, ask those questions, and do great things. So it's energizing. I always say that advisors should have administrators, they should have a rejuvenating experience late in their career, something that carries them through like the last 5 years, something that is different and interesting and just jumpstarts the passion they have for the career. And this is it for me, definitely. Love, it's, yeah, there's the normal uniquenesses of every school that are super fun. But this has been a great career move. It's really cool.
As somebody who has worked at a number of institutions, yes, those quirks and idiosyncrasies that exist at every institution, are always entertaining.
Yes.
But I think you can hear. I mean, look, the passion that comes across it in terms of what you're talking, and it was really interesting to hear what you're doing now. I want to take you back a little bit because I was doing some research, obviously for this. And I actually came across a video that you did way back in 2011 with Eric Stoller, who Matt and I have spoken to. A student affair that is live, and I mean, at that point again, your passion really shone through. And I suppose I'm just, it kind of goes back to a little bit around your origin story, but particularly maybe tying it into, because you can hear the way you talk about advising, but I'm thinking of the fact that you were involved with the new advisor guidebook, and kind of looking back, and where you are now, for advisors or new people coming into the field in particular, like reflecting on maybe the book and your past experiences. What are the things that you think maybe advisors need now? Have things changed since you were involved in that publication, Jennifer, or really are those core skills still the same?
Well, that's a great question. The short version is probably that the core skills have remained the same. The ability to, once you get through training, because training is in your first, your early year or early 2 years, while you're still trying to figure out, like, what is my name? What am I doing? Who can help right now? But once you get through those early years, the ability or the need, the importance of an advisor looking up and doing the landscape scan. Do I understand exceptions? Do I understand policy? What do I need to learn next in terms of technology, or in terms of how the course approval process? Like, you're always looking up. I had a friend describe it once to me that advisors impact individuals every day in their offices. And then as you grow in the field, your ideas, maybe your position, certainly your reach, slowly but surely, you might impact one entire class, or you might impact the whole first year class. And then slowly, you get to see more. When you look up and look around, and your reach potentially can grow as far as you can see. So the things about understanding just the 2 and 3 and 5 and 10-year goals of thriving in this profession and building knowledge, building expertise, where you at some point go from learning to teaching. And so you're the person now who's teaching the new advisors, or training the new advisors, or rising from advisor to lead advisor, or lead advisor to assistant, or assistant director to associate dean, or something like that. Like that sounds like an ambition calendar, but it's actually also an experience and knowledge timeline too. Those are things that happen if you take advantage of the opportunities to look up and affect change over time. So that part is the same. A new advisor goes through that cycle that, Pat Folsom at Iowa first wrote and talked about. But I think now this transition period, because as you say with the Eric interview, like, I was right there when advisors first started to use Twitter. And think of academic advising chat and all the programming and everything that has resulted. And now we have this explosion of media, and who knows what we'll be doing in 5 years. But the COVID period is, again, an inflection, a tipping point, a point at which we really ask different questions. And advisors who are advising now but didn't advise during COVID, advisors who spanned COVID, and folks who retired before COVID, those are going to be some very different generations. The people who are still who worked through COVID, golly, just the attention to mental health, the attention to student mental health, the attention to the challenges, the extreme challenges now faced in higher ed. Those are going to mark colleagues of this particular generation. That's my thinking. So they have added issues that previous supervisors don't know anything about because they had retired really before these last couple years. That was a really long answer, but there are these. This is definitely a reflection point for a lot of people and for higher ed in general, I think.
Yeah, and it seems like there's more needs now, like for a supervisor to connect with their staff, especially like you're saying. There's a lot of overlap where you might have those advisors that worked through COVID to now, those that are now starting, those that did retire. So there's people are in so many different places right now. So yeah. I could feel it with a supervisor's job.
Yeah. We didn't go home very much. Colleagues at small private institutions in the United States, I think less than 10% of them went home for longer. Like we were only home 6 weeks. So this last year, as folks were writing on social media and talking about having to go back to the office, I was empathetic, but I was like, please, I've been here for a whole year before you have been, so the privilege of bigger institutions that have different financial circumstances, that has played a role. Anyway, it's a complex time coming out of this.
Yeah, I think kind of connect to that. You spoke to did a virtual keynote session for the Oklahoma Academic Advising Association. And, you spoke about grace at work. You talked about sociologist Ray Oldenburg's work. Part of that was healthy individuals are part of healthy communities and vice versa. And that it's a place where people can find themselves. They can drop in, they can drop out. But you talked about people needing 3 places to feel accepted.
Yeah.
And, 2 of them were home and also work. And then that individuals also need to find like a 3rd place. Can you talk more about like having those places, like those safe spaces? Because I think sometimes too, especially during COVID, like work and home ended up kind of blending into one.
Yeah. And absolutely. And this again is in part also issues of privilege and it's kind of wrapped up into your situation, either as a family or financially during this difficult time. My kids have grown up and left the house and are either with they're with my ex, and my daughter's with my ex in Kansas City. My son is on his own in Lafayette, Indiana. And so during the COVID period, my 3rd space was my neighborhood. And once we came back, I had work as a separate location. I had home as a separate location. We had virtual church. That played a big role as a 3rd space for me. Certainly being in my neighborhood and being home with my partner, Kathy, that was a big source of joy and relief. Missouri had a very, I'll say, interesting response to the pandemic. And so we probably were out in the public period, certainly more than in Ireland and other parts of the European Union, and more, I assume, than California. So it was, it's informed by region, it's informed by class, it's certainly informed by race, and also what family members were doing as well at that time. I didn't have young children, so I wasn't also navigating elementary schools and middle schools and high school schedules, but other members of staff were, and so it was a complicated time. And Not everybody had the release and relief that comes from the self-knowledge that you need. You need you need at least 3, but many people have more. So, yeah.
And I suppose one of the impacts that we saw during the pandemic was especially on the technological side of things. And I know that's an area that you've obviously been involved in for a long time. And I'm just like the last month here, certainly, and I assume it's the same, has been dominated by ChatGPT. It is what everyone in education, certainly
Yep.
on this side of the Atlantic, seems to be talking about, and its impact and the different responses. I'm not saying it specifically to that, though if you have thought about it, great. But just I'm thinking, Jennifer, in relation to technological advances, and particularly where we're at, AI, and that does that excite you in terms of its impact or potential impact on advising, or are you cautious about its impact on advising?
The gosh, that is definitely a complicated question. One thing we're seeing here, and right now, of course, as a faculty centric university, we are talking about it in relation to students, student writers, student writing papers, those kinds of things. But I mean, I'm fortunate in that we also have a lot of entrepreneurially minded students and entrepreneurially minded staff and faculty. Everyone is a creator and a maker these days. So that's kind of fun. And so they're talking about the positive uses of ChatGPT. Like they're saying it's like the calculator 50 years ago, right? 40 years ago. And it's a tool. And we want students to show their work in the classroom. So there should be rules around writing papers, and there should be conversations about how it impacts your classroom experience. But our freelance writers, staff members who are writing they're writing for training manuals. They're writing for in-house documents. They're writing for the web. They're using it, and it's making their lives and work a little easier. I have stared at my fair share of blank screens, wishing I had any idea how to start the next thing I'm writing. And yeah, so the conversation around how ChatGPT isn't accurate. So you can use it for brainstorming, you can use it, but there's always a mistake. Like there's always a mistake. And that's what we tell students. This isn't unqualified. This is just a tool. You still should construct sentences and practice constructing sentences and things like that. I think on the creation of materials for your work and the creation of materials for the web and things that will make it easier to again write for your job. I think it will be. I'm cautiously optimistic. I don't want students to use it for their resume. I don't want advisors to do it for their letters of recommendation for med school. I think that there is analysis and critical thinking and reflection that should be part of this. So that's kind of my early take. Are you two at schools that are talking about it in relation to advising in ways I haven't thought of?
No, I think much like what the discussions at your university right now, it has been particularly on the impact around essays and assessment. But I would probably have the view that this is something like, the calculator, the printing press, this is a game changer. And I think as we talk now at the beginning of 2023, I don't think we're even aware of the potential impacts. I think it would be 100%. A bit like, the imagined future of the Jetsons, right? And there were aspects of it. We don't have the flying cars, but we do have the devices where I can talk to somebody and see their face, and here we are doing that right now. And I just think it's fascinating. I think what you said was that ability to put something on paper, and then and the hope, I suppose, is it might take some of the that kind of maybe the beginning part and allow you more time. I mean, I think the ultimate aim of technology, and I know, Matt, we talked about this with Eric and others, was to hopefully free up time to allow you to spend then with students, and that, but I just find it certainly in over here it is fascinating, but it is the assessment piece that is dominating. Right. But it is the response to it, because you, on the one hand, you have a lot of faculty and a lot of people within the university, including advisors, saying this is great, we need to see how we engage with this and think about it, talk to students, much like you said. But equally, on the other hand, you have people who are saying, this is terrifying. We need to go back to pen and paper and closed off assessments and lock everyone in a room and no technological devices. So that was, to me, talking to somebody like you who's in the field and interested in technology and hearing your thoughts. I think that is really good for listeners, because I do think it's a debate and it's a discussion that will be ongoing and that does need to be had.
Yeah, I agree. Matt, anything going on with you all?
I think it's kind of like the beginning stages of those conversations. And, I think you have groups that immediately it's like kind of Colum saying, like, we shouldn't have this. I think people get to the extreme, and I don't know, maybe it could be true. You watch a lot of these movies with futures that technology becomes sentient, they come alive. It's like, is this going to lead to that? But then are we leading to more cheating or whatnot? But I like what you've talked about, like a lot of the pros that can come out of this. Like, there's a lot of positives of this. My hope is that this doesn't become something that, hopefully it's something that we can use, make more time that we can chat with students, but not like other new technologies that come about that were promised certain things and then it ends up adding even more to our plate.
Right. Yeah. The spread of misinformation and the ways in which, as a society, we are really impacted by multiple channels of dubious or concerning habits and trends makes me a little pessimistic about our ability. Well, there's obviously not going to be any control of this. So I try hard to be optimistic, but I should never underestimate capitalism. I think as the older I get, the more I think, wow, this could be something for good. I wonder where we'll go. So those are concerning. We're just at such a concerning place in terms of our ability to critically analyze, think, and share professionally, ethically, those kinds of things. So those are some moments of concern for me a little bit.
Yeah, maybe we'll do a follow-up special episode in like a year, and we'll see where things are at that point.
Please don't play this even in 1 year. But yeah, we're all missing our jetpacks. I just want to say that was supposed to be delivered.
Yeah. Jetsons, Back to the Future, so many shows. I'm like, we were supposed to have that already.
All of that. Yeah.
So, one of the things that you've also done a lot is publish, and you've edited, and one of it most recently was the book you co-edited with Craig McGill, the Advising LGBTQA College Students. Can you tell us more about the publication, and why this is important, why and what's in there for advisors to be able to use?
Oh gosh, that is a great question. There's so much in that book. There's personal journeys. There are important facts to situate readers of where we are, kind of in these early 2020s, as it is. And there's good data and research captured from a wide variety of authors in a variety of fields. So it's not at all a unidimensional look at and solely from one field, the field of advising. There are student health professionals, there are professional counselors, there are career specialists, there are campus activists, there's and really, really smart people and great writers who were part of this visionary book. One of my smartest writing decisions is to write with other people. I love the process, and I've had just the privilege of writing with like Craig McGill, who is one of those people who can wake up in the morning and go to bed at night and have thought of 6 other things he wants to write about. Like when you see people like that, you think, he's doing exactly what he should be doing. And I've also written with Wendy Troxel and Pat Folsom and Frank Yoder. I've presented with C.J. Venable, another absolutely visionary thinker, writer, speaker in the field. So the process of casting this net pretty widely and hearing from not only folks in advising but throughout the landscape has made a big difference. So you can, and one of the cool things that Wendy Schindler and Sarah Stevens and Craig and many others, I shouldn't name names because I'll miss somebody, really also wanted to hear from colleagues in the field and their journey to understand these issues, these complex issues, and how to help students. So they're actually voices from our colleagues about their own journey to understand queer and LGBT and trans student experiences. So there's personal connection, there's data, there's latest research, there's lots of great vignettes and case studies. I think there are a lot of access points in this book, and I hope folks will take time to thumb through and look at it.
Yeah, and I think that it is a lot of even what you talk about in the book is so transferable to and other groups and for I'm thinking in an Irish context in particular, like we have undergone massive changes for the better in terms of diversity on this little island in just the space of a couple of decades, and obviously this over the past couple of years, we have had a huge change to our society in terms of diversity, and obviously in taking people in from the conflict in Ukraine. And I'm thinking like of colleagues and across I can see from this book like we're suddenly dealing with diversity in Irish universities, and up to now it was maybe just some international students who came on a study abroad semester. This is obviously very different. So there's a lot that can be taken from that. And I think maybe Jennifer, because it was interesting, like you talked about like, collaborating with others, and you talked about like Craig comes up and has lots of ideas, and you approach things in different ways, but there will be people kind of obviously listening, and you have done the presentations and you've done publications, who operate in different ways. I'm just thinking like, for you, like, is your advice to try to find somebody who thinks in different ways, or like how for somebody who's starting out and is like is thinking, I have an idea, I'm really interested in this topic, like what would your advice be in terms of going to build, be it a presentation or a publication?
Right. And I know you've given this, Wendy Troxel is an unending source of great advice. She will say, you have to write with someone. If you're going to write with someone, write with somebody who doesn't procrastinate the same way you do. So that's a critical piece, that you bring out the better nature, the better angels of both of your natures, instead of we're supposed to meet, I can't meet, can we put it off? So that is always practical advice, right? With someone who brings out the very best and who helps you meet deadlines and vice versa. But gosh, I, as an early graduate student, I had a professor, actually had a lot of experiences even in undergraduate, where professors taught me how they think. And I remember one time going to see a professor, and he had just opened his mail, and he held up a book and he said, "She wrote my book." So he had a colleague who wrote a book before he could. And then I had a graduate professor who said, "Speaking is great, conferences are great, but you have to write to influence the field." And so I am definitely a speak keynote, like that is mainly where I have done extra in terms of extracurricular, but writing in the field is very important. So try different things. Try writing by yourself. Try a small thing. Try writing with others. Write with a group of people. If you're just starting out, um, give it a shot on your own, but don't ever be afraid. And you should always, no matter what you do, you should always be talking about what you're interested in. That's what we tell students who are trying on different callings and vocations. Like, talk to people about what you're thinking about, because somebody knows somebody who has tried that or done that, or can recommend something to you. And that's what, whether you're a graduate student, a new professional, whether you're an advisor who now feels comfortable enough to write and do further work, get your courage up a little bit and give it a go. You'll find the right thing for you. And I know I was listening to a former podcast where they talked about when you give a presentation, if presentations are kind of your jam, make an outline and use that outline for the presentation as your first draft of something for academic advising today. The biggest mistake you make is not trying something. That is a life filled with regrets, and it's no fun at all. So give something a go, and then talk to people, because somebody will help you take that further.
Absolutely. That's great advice. And yeah, I mean, I think the confidence part is a big one, because we can easily tell ourselves not to do something,
I
or, oh,
know.
I'm not good enough for this. But it's just, and I think for some people too, even me included, it's always the starting of it is the
Yeah,
hardest part.
100%. Absolutely. And everybody faces a blank page. I
Hmm.
mean, some people can get through the page faster, get it going faster, but everybody, everybody struggles with starting. Or they have 1,000 ideas and they still can't write that first paragraph. So much more common. And the more we talk about our process, the more we norm it out for other people. So they really hear, it's not like CJ or Craig sit down and write a book in a night. You know, everyone, Sharon, everyone involved in the field, we all struggle.
But just like you were mentioning, like with the, because I always quote Wendy, because she's always the one that's always said, like, record your presentations, because literally you transcribe
Yeah,
it. That's your initial outline
absolutely.
of a manuscript. So
Yeah.
trust and believe. But Jennifer, this has been a fun and informative interview. I mean, this has been a joy for the both of us to have you here, and thank you for being on the podcast with us today. And I guess we can end with a quote that you've used before in presentation, and that's quoting from Galaxy Quest, and that's to never give up and never surrender. So
Absolutely.
thank you so much for being on the
Oh,
podcast, Jennifer.
thanks for having me. It is such an honor and a privilege. And many, many thanks to both of you for your commitment to the field and everything you've done with the podcast. It's a work of art and a thing of beauty.
I appreciate that. Thank you.